Hi, welcome to D10tion, where a bunch of us pretend to know what we're talking about when it comes to D&D. I am your host. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, Tristan. We have, to my left, we have our wonderful Sam. I'm pretty sure I know what I'm doing. And we have to my right, Brandon. I know more than you will ever know. Yeah. Today, we're going to talk about a fun topic. This is going to be a debate.
Ooh, debate episode.
This way I don't get yelled at this time. We're going to talk about
we should yell at him.
Party balance.
Bum, bum, bum.
And by party balance, what we're talking about is as far as building a team for a campaign.
Or one shot.
Is picking races or classes to kind of just to help kind of people figure out what they want to do. So there's two sides of the argument. There's going to be the argument of you guys should all talk to each other and figure out how to make a balanced party. Or everyone should just play whatever they want. And just deal with whatever consequences that may be.
Yeah.
So what we're going to have is we're going to have Sam, who is very much the mentality of play what you want, and anyone else's opinion be damned. And we have Brandon. Brandon's going to be here to argue a bit more about having a more well-balanced party.
Now let it be stated, I am not holistically against having fun and making whatever you want. It's just, from the DM logistic, also brain point. Like, party balance is fine for what I'm talking about. So I'll let you go first, though.
So we have the first cop-out already. Great.
All right. So I was going to let you go first. So as far as having party balance, like, that's nice. And I can see where in certain aspects that might make things a little easier, maybe for the DM or maybe for the players. But that being said, like, you should just play what you want to play. I think that makes it fun. And even if you wind up having, like, some of the same aspects, there's so much variety that, I mean, you're bound to have variances.
Yes, but even if with those variances, let's say everyone wants to be stealthy in some way, that still leaves a huge, like, hole left in the dynamic. Once everyone's sneaking, like, someone's sneaking and does poorly, everyone's caught, what are people going to do, like, smoke bomb!
That's a good point. Rebuttal.
So my rebuttal to that is going to be that sometimes that just makes it interesting. I mean, if you have, like, let's say you have no spellcasters, you've got, like, 2 fighters, and then maybe you have, like, a rogue, and I don't know, whatever. Right? You have no spellcasters. You have nobody to heal you. You have nobody to do any sort of, like, real long-range damage. Disarm traps. I just think that just makes it kind of a bit more interesting in the players then have to come up with creative ways around that obstacle. And then as a DM, I think you can have a little bit more fun kind of making it challenging for them.
Yes.
Screwing your players.
Yes, you
I was going to say it. Thank you for translating.
But inversely from that is there's certain situations and you can't experience in D&D. I know D&D, every experience is going to be different, but if the party isn't, like, let's say it doesn't have any magic users, there's a whole subsection of D&D that's just from the party because their characters have the potential to understand, but no one who can really, like, embody that.
Well, I guess that becomes the question of, is that more harmful to the group or is it more hurtful to the DM for having something part of that as far as, like, the whole portion of it that they're missing? Is it always going to be so vital, or is there still not going to be ways for them to figure it out, depending on how well they roll?
It depends on what the DM's plan is in their campaign. That's if someone already has a campaign figured out and there's magic focus, and then the party rolls up with like 3 fighters, a barbarian, 2 rogues. It's like, well, magic is.
I mean, but like I said, it might force the players to kind of think a little differently or take a different approach. They might have to be nice to some NPCs who maybe know some magic and can help them out, or they might have to find magical items and figure out how to use those. I just think that shouldn't be an excuse to not do it. I think that there's ways around it.
Now, see, here the question becomes at this point now. We've said either campaigns or one-shots. So this is where you can start to really try to focus either one of those arguments towards one of those. As far as one-shots go, you tend to know about the one-shot beforehand, or at least some vague idea of the story. So that's where you can almost play what you want, but you could also focus it towards that if you know enough about it. Whereas with a regular campaign, it's so much more of a mystery, so you can go either direction.
And that's why for a main campaign, I am for the balance of the party, having at least somebody in any sort of, you can have the variants, like you said, the different classes. So at least there's a part of the role is being filled, like the healer, the tank, the stealth, the face of the party, and the overall magic user. Those 5 give you a little bit of everything and add a little bit of balance.
See, but there is something to be said, and I'm sure Sam will agree with me. If you're playing a full campaign, this is supposed to be a world that you're living in. That's the whole point of D&D. And the likelihood of a full group of each person filling out a very specific role is going to be so minimal. Because, especially depending on the people you're playing with, because you're going to have people who maybe the character they want to play is going to be connected to someone else who's already playing, depending on the group.
And to be fair, personally, I'm all for not, like, if in a perfect world, like, as a DM, as a player, I wouldn't want to know what people are playing before I picked.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, sometimes people get, like, if the party already has a rogue, I feel like sometimes people are like, oh, well, I guess I can't play a rogue. I guess I'll play something else.
So that's a good point, because you can start, let's say you have new players, you can start alienating other players that way. Because, let's for example, I tend to play almost exclusively, like, more barbarian-type characters. I've branched out with monks and fighters, but when I've tried playing, even a ranger, but if I were to try and play a warlock right out the gate, it's going to be really hard for me to even figure out what the hell I'm doing.
But to that is, let's say you haven't played D&D, but you're really familiar with RPGs, and you stay in your little safe bubble. That you can be happy with that safe bubble, but by branching out and deciding to play something different the party needs, that gives you a chance and opportunity to become a more well-rounded player.
And I don't disagree with that, but I don't think that that's something that should be forced upon. I feel like that's something that should happen naturally.
If you want to be a good team player, it will happen naturally.
Well, but see, that's the thing. You're talking about being a good team player. It makes it so that you have to feel a specific role that would fit something. For example, you're like, well, we need someone to play a magic-based character. Putting that kind of pressure on people is not going to make them want to play unless they're already playing.
You don't have to be sole into that role. There are going to be people who can split between 2 different functions.
We'll see, and then that brings into the question as far as having people start and then bringing up multi-classing. Because multi-classing can change that entire perspective. People can all start in one thing, and you could have it so that even the DM could probably even point out to certain players, like, hey, just so you know, you missed a lot of magical stuff. None of you guys know magic. And that's a little bit of metagaming, but that can be something that might trigger with some people, and even not necessarily maybe new players, but there are plenty of new players that you mentioned multi-classing. They're like, oh, I'd love to be a rogue that can do more magic than just an arcane trickster, and then they start multi-classing. That could have it so that they have to learn and adapt, because this is very much an adaptive, critical thinking, kind of role-playing game. So it may be that you almost like encourage players, like if they do have a gap, like, hey, you guys missed a lot because none of you guys can use magic, and again that teeters with metagaming on how you do it. But that's where you can start doing, like, if somebody knew some more magic, that would be really helpful
as a DM,
right now.
You could easily have an NPC who's an old, and I'm just spitballing here, you can have an old NPC that talks about, a mage guild. And then and say, like, none of you can access this or any of its libraries because none of you can cast magic.
But then that you start running into the thing where people are like, okay, cool. How do I think my way around that? And the rogue starts sneaking into these places.
Yes, which is a totally plausible and realistic solution, but that then comes with some challenges of if the rogue messes up.
Just a side point, I just felt like that whole conversation was part of the D&D live movie where there's like a mage guild and the rogues sneak in.
Right.
Yeah.
And that did not go well.
He had 2 rogues.
It did not go
well. Was she technically a sorcerer?
No, she was a wizard.
She learned
her magic.
I was pretty sure she'd learned it. Whereas,
side notes.
As opposed to Jeremy Irons' character was probably a warlock.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And then there was a ranger. And then
there was a ranger.
Or a fighter, I guess. They wear armor.
But there's so many variations now. Like for example, you can have 2 fighters, and one can be like a samurai, and the other can be an eldritch knight. And there might be some variation there, or I don't think it's always. If you wind up with 5 bards that are all like College of Lore, then that's just like some random frickin' chance.
You better hope it's Battle of the Bands one shot.
Or, you're the Bardashians. But I think there's still something interesting there that, like, it's almost kind of unique in its own way to kind of have, like, this party that's just can only do one thing. And even as a DM, even if I'd already written a campaign, I would probably be like, man, I bet I could probably tailor this a little bit more and maybe, like, make some adjustments.
That is true. Making adjustments is how you DM, either on the fly or in advance. But let's say we do the 5 bards, we do the Bardashians. Then everyone's stats are going to be, because of bards, your stats are going to be close to like how you're going to do it. There's only so many things you can do as a bard. Your stats line up. Your charisma's going to be the highest because that's your charisma. So,
but then again, it also varies by stat rolls. You might get somebody who's got a stat roll just block that's just amazing, and then somebody else who rolls garbage like me, and it's just horrible, like, across the board.
See, now I'm okay. I mean, in that unfortunate, I was lucky and unfortunate, but that's why I'm also for like a varying of stats.
Oh, and I'll agree on that point.
But that's where the differences in people filling those roles you pop up. There's peaks and valleys for every player. If everyone's filling a role, then they each have their own individual peak and their individual valley. While if everyone's playing things that are close to each other, their peaks are going to start to overlap.
Well, maybe. I mean,
right, well, this is where subclasses can also come into play, where you can vary enough. I mean, because let's say, like, 5 bards. There's more than one bard at college, so you can have some that are much more battle oriented or charismatic and stuff like that.
But stats-wise, let's say the party does something, and they, through their actions and through either successes and a little bit of failure or pure failure, they need some strength. I don't believe.
Multi-class.
But that, once again, that goes into the improvisation of the game and the problem solving. What if they persuade a very strong person to help them out?
But what if they try and persuade and then fail, and then now they're at a...
That's part of the game, though. I think that it comes with its rises and falls. And not only that, but I think, like, for example, in our campaign, we have 2 rogues. And granted, we're both stealthy, we're both dexy,
That's debatable.
My charisma's better. But
that's debatable.
But I think that it kind of can make it interesting, too. I mean, there's nothing to say that, like, you can't have 2 rogues that are really good at stealth. And then, I don't know, you can do some interesting things with that. Maybe they have a breaking and entering contest. Maybe they have a pickpocketing contest, see who's the better rogue. I just think that sometimes that some similarities can make for some interesting conflict within the party.
And here's 2 points. These are 2 very different things I'm going to talk about here. One is maybe it requires a death in the party to make people reevaluate what they're doing. Because let's say you have a party member die, and you're like, okay, wow, we were really missing something. Is it something that I'm willing to do? Or, I mean, depending on how far it is, let's say you're at like a level 10, and your character dies, and all right, cool, roll another level 10 character. That's where you may decide to either play another character or multi-class, so you can still be with that group. Because again, like let's say the Bardashians, one of them dies, heaven forbid.
And their family name.
It's a family name, and let's say like, man, they died. We need to call our cousin so and so
Chadwick Bardashian.
Right. So and you have it so that they're, for some reason, like they have a barbarian character show up, but they have good charisma. Maybe with the look of the roll, or if they're level 10, maybe you have it so they're a barbarian and have the multi-class in both and work with both. So they can still fit in. So it might have to come down to having it so characters have a trial and error and deal with that. But I think it also leads into the importance of, especially with newer players, which I think a lot of this comes down to, is newer players who may not know very much, know how to want to play certain things, is the importance of one-shots.
Yeah.
One-shots become very vital with that, because then you have 2 to 3 sessions, maybe 1 to 3 sessions.
1 to 3 sessions,
depending on how it goes. Because I mean, there's no necessity of winning. You die, you die.
A one shot, you easily could lose.
Right. So I mean, there's probably something to be said about playing a one shot on occasion, from just to get first off, a break from your main campaign, so it doesn't get too old to you. But then you could start doing it where people try different things, and they just realize that I'm not really okay with this. I mean, because even when I played our holiday one, I played an Eldritch Knight fighter rather than a regular fighter, and it's one of those things where I really realized, like, I don't know how to use magic at all. I am really bad at magic. Unless it was one of those things where I used only magic for more, survival attacks or healing or something like that. Where I'm predominantly, when I play a character, it's much more combat based. Or, like if I were to play a rogue and stuff, I could probably deal with that a little bit. But I think that's where the importance of one shots come in. Where I can play a monk, I can play a barbarian, I can play a fighter, and just not mess around too much with magic. And again, granted, that cuts off like half of my
pool.
Of what I can do, but I think it's where it comes down to personal player preference. But then that falls into Sam's point as far as playing what you want to play.
Right.
And you shouldn't be restricted, because you're not going to play a game where someone's like, all right, cool, we need a healer, and you're like, I don't want to be the healer.
I can respect wanting to have balance in your game and wanting, to be able to explore these different aspects, and, so maybe having one of each of those is nice for the party. But on the other hand, like I said, you don't want to force people into something they don't really want to do. It's like the old stereotype of I guess I'll play the healer, right? Because every party needs a healer.
I need the healing.
It just kind of gets it gets frustrating. And I think that, nobody should be told, oh, well, you can't play this. We already have one of those.
And I completely agree that you shouldn't be forced to do it. That's why I don't force people. I challenge them to think about what they could do to push themselves away from what they know and try something new while still being close. So you could do, let's say you needed a healer, druid. Boom. You can do a battle, you can also do healing.
Right.
You have that balance where you could do both and you're still somewhat familiar with what you want to do. Because there's a bunch of different druids. You don't have to wild shape. There's druids that never wild shape and they just use magic and hit things really hard with spells. So you could do that and still be a healer while also pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and learning something new. So the party balance, you don't have to have cleric healer, a barbarian tank, a rogue stealth, a bard face, and a sorcerer magic. You can have the variations on that. As long as somebody's able to do at least a little bit of something in that balance, allows the party to also, some members can shine in certain moments while others can't. If the barbarian with no charisma walks up and tries to persuade a guard nicely, that's a bit of a valley for that, unless he's trying to intimidate.
I'm going to counteract that by saying that also has to do with the rolls.
Yes.
And we all know that sometimes it doesn't matter how good your plus to deception is. If your roll sucks, you're going to get caught in the lie.
And of course, that comes down to also, as a player, how you handle that kind of situation. Again, with Sorn, Sorn doesn't have good charisma to the point where he actually has negative on it. But because the way I play Sorn, it doesn't usually come up a whole lot. Because since Sorn is lawful good, and he's, despite the fact that he doesn't have any negatives on intelligence or anything, he's not the smartest, everyone out of everyone, but since I don't tend to lie or I phrase things a certain way or stuff like that, it's not effective so much.
Yes,
but then there's the times where I definitely need it.
Yes, and that's where someone can come up and be the hero to the party in that moment.
Right.
So that's why I prefer the variation and the nice round balance, because then everyone gets a chance to. Because if let's say we're back to the bars and everyone has really high charisma.
Right.
So, eventually, through the systematic of however people play, someone's always going to become the face, and then everyone else's highest stat of charisma, most likely, will become useless. Because everyone's going to be everyone's going to want to try and be the face. But if somebody already is that face and is acting as the face and is rolling and has the best in whatever they're trying to do for being the face, then everyone else is kind of the backup. If there's Justin Timberlake and the rest of the boy band.
How dare you insult NSYNC that way?
But I can understand that point. I still think that the rules have a lot to do with it, because even with a normal party, you can still kind of run into those scenarios. If you're...
But that leaves someone to be the face, and then someone else can do something else. Let's say persuasion and being charismatic is not working. Then you have the big bruiser come up right behind the guy and crack his knuckles, and then it's a whole different face.
But he said, it also depends on how players play.
Right. So
for example,
I'm the face of the party, but she's got the much better charisma, but the way she plays is much more in the background.
But he, as the big bruiser, should be intimidating. But because of how he plays Sorn, he doesn't use
It
intimidation.
also depends on who
people.
they're talking to, though. If you're talking to a town's guard, yeah, you're going to want to do your face, your nice guy, unless they don't want to work with it, and then you try and bring your bruiser up to be like, hey, we're big. But if Sorn, we're talking, let's say the face was trying to talk to a bad guy, and Sorn will come up and be like, this person's a bad person. I'm going to flex up on him. He would totally do that. He's done that before.
I'm just saying, I think it really depends on how people play, though.
It is.
Right, because then that's going to come down to situations, because even then, I don't think my intimidation's even all that great. But
No, I don't think it is.
Use your strength mod.
right, there's times where that becomes the thing versus the charisma. So yeah, I think it comes down to again like what Sam is saying as far as how you play, or even how your DM decides to interpret the situation. So I mean, I think some of it comes down to is having a DM, and we talked about this last time when we were talking about character development. Is the DM asking the right questions as far as building a character?
Right.
Because especially with newer players that we've noticed with you, I mean, it's one of those things where one of the first things you do, and they're like, "What do you want to do? Do you want spells or no spells? Do you want to be
Make a tree out of it.
right? You essentially make a skill tree out of it." And sometimes people that's a question that they need to understand. It's like,
Do you want to be an edgelord?
Do you want to be an
Yes.
edgelord, or do you want to, or are we just gonna make you a halfling ranger?
Halfling ranger.
I mean, halfling rangers can be edgelords too.
Gnome rangers can be a thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what I mean. I'm all for the palette, like for people being creative and making what they want, but still being within. Like, let's say someone wants to be, like, race-wise. They're going to talk about different like variation in races.
Right.
I'm all for, and not everyone being like. Let's say they're being the Bardashians. Everyone's an elf Bardashian or half-elf Bardashian. Charisma high, dexterity high. They're all the perfect bards. Cool, everyone's gonna want, like, let's say they want, like, half elves and elves are pretty wildly accepted and known, so there's not going to be too much of a challenge going into a town, while let's say the races of the party are very diverse, like a dragonborn and a tiefling and a ganassi and a barbarian and an elf walk into a town. Not everyone's gonna, like, the Bardashians are gonna walk in and they're gonna be noticed because they're all beautiful people walking into town, but if the other party walks into town, there's going to be more of an interesting, like, people are going to perk attention, and that causes the group to, like, improvise how they're going to interact in a city, because you're going to need someone to be the face, so they're more accepted. Because if you go into a town where people hate elves, like, or specifically a specific type of elf, or people hate tieflings, then you're going to need to shuffle who's doing what. Even if, let's say, the tiefling is the face of the party, then how they're going to have to change that around? Well, if everyone's, like, a similar race, then there's no way. Either they're all hated or they're all liked.
Once again, that might also be on the DM as well. I think that it might take a little bit of initiative on the DM's part. Like you said, like, let's say that they run into a cult that just hates elves. Instead of walking into a town where elves are totally popular. I like I said, sometimes I think you just have to. I think you might have to make minor tweaks and adjustments to your campaign. You can still use your original thing, but just to throw something in there, as opposed to forcing players to play something they don't want to play.
Well, I mean, you could run into the issue of I shouldn't say issue, but how the DM deems how they want to do it. If they want to stick hard and fast to their story, and if the players aren't prepared for it, then you almost have to warn the players.
Any DM who wants to stick hard and fast to your story is just lying to themselves. That does not happen.
Well, I mean, as far as like you don't want to compromise. Let's say like everyone does decide to shoot. None of them have a magic-based character, a character that understands magic at all. Everyone's just a rogue and a fighter and a barbarian and
smash, hit, poke.
Yeah, and but your story has a lot of magic in it.
See, but as a DM, like a newer DM. I would think that that's so interesting to the point where I would probably just eliminate magic from my world and make it very rare.
It depends on how attached you are to the story. Because again, if this is something that's pre-done, you're not going to be able to change too much.
Like we're going to talk about pre-made stories and how party makeup does that. But let's say there's no magic. You don't want to, as a DM, even if there's new players, you don't want to baby them a little bit. You don't want to be like, oh, you didn't pick magic. Magic doesn't exist now, so we don't have to worry about it. You let
clarify. I said make it rare.
Well, but that's still like you still don't want to do that. If magic exists and you want magic to exist, they need to know it exists so they know that. Oh,
and that's fine too. I was just giving another option as far as what you
as far as having it so you start them in a different area than you originally planned on, so that you could somewhat ease them into it, like preparing them for it. This is as far as like tweaking you. Yeah. Let's say that you have this campaign in this world, and you're like, okay, this is where the main story is.
We're gonna drop them over here.
We're gonna drop them over here where magic's not so predominant and stuff like that. But if they really wanted to get to the story, they need to get this way and get a lot of hints, and because of course
they need to get a lot of help, and they're gonna have to really work for it, which is fine.
Right, whether it's magical items or character dies and re-rolls, or they multi-class or whatever. By the time they get to the main, because again, a lot of these things we're not talking about their short term, unless it's a one shot. One shots. I would argue that one shots are whatever you want to play.
One shots are the place where you just go nuts.
Okay.
But even then,
let me
should be a decision of
just
a group.
Make this statement. You have to play a spellcaster. My next campaign. How does that make you feel? We have no spellcasters. We need a spellcaster.
No, we're not saying that they have to. We're saying that we're not even pinpointing a certain person has to.
I'm just saying that's kind of what it feels like almost.
But I wouldn't say. But then I would say we have no one who has a good arcane or any sort of magical sense. That's when you're not saying pick it. You're saying we don't have it. You can still pick. Let's say you still want to pick your fighter. Boop, Eldritch Knight. Just boop.
I mean, but that's you kind of pushing them in the direction that you want them to go.
Not even. You're not pushing a single person though.
You're letting the group know, and then they get to decide.
Right, and they can, and that's the thing. I guess is one of those things you can say, "Hey, group, you know there's magic in this world, right?"
D&D has magic in it, unless you set the precedent. Like before people start making characters, magic isn't a thing. Then that's fine. Then someone, if they want to pick them, if you say magic's not a thing, that leads to like one of two things that's going to happen. Nobody picks magic, or everyone's going to pick magic. So they can be like, we have magic and no one else does.
And this is one of those things where this is partially on the DM too, especially if it's an original story. You need to kind of let them know kind of the world that they're in so they can kind of better figure out. If you're like, all right, guys, we're playing a story, good luck, versus like, all right, guys, here's a few things. Like when we started playing yours, you let us know. Just so you know, guns are a really rare thing. So not everyone's going to be playing like a gunslinger right out the gate.
Yeah, everyone's going to be like, pew, 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 pew.
Right. So like maybe letting your party know kind of like the world that they're entering into is
right.
If you're like, hey, guns are rare, magic's a big thing here, demon lords are all around.
Clockwork's the thing that happens, but not in the way you think. Like that type of thing, that sets the precedent of, okay, I know what exists, I know what doesn't, how do I fit in?
Right, so that's almost so. There's the part of instead of like even giving like, oh, you guys are kind of screwed by not picking this, giving them information to choose on their own, and if still know what
they want to ignore it, fine.
And this is where I think this is somewhat on the players as far as talking to other players, and not to even base their decision off of that, but more of like because if you talk to other players, there might be other players that are like, do I want to play a cleric or do I want to play this? They could be up in their own head, and you're like, "Oh man, I really want to play the ranger," and they're like, "Okay, cool. I don't want to pick that. I'm going to go ahead and do the cleric."
I think it also comes down to the individual person because you're going to have players that are going to be like, "Oh yeah, no, we should probably get a spellcaster. We don't have one. I guess I'll do it." And as of an individual choice, that's their choice.
Yeah.
Right. But of course, you're also going to have players that's like, "No, I want to be a dark and brooding road. Screw magic."
Well, see, and
my backstory is so interesting.
That's also their choice. And I just don't think that anybody should feel like they can't play something that they really want to play. If they're like dead set on it, there's no need to sit there and like try to force them.
Well, I think a big thing that happens is when you get a group of people to play D&D, you have a group of anywhere between like, 3 to 6 to 10. Oh, yeah.
If you ever have a 10-person group, you are insane, and combat's going to take you hours.
Yeah.
You're going to have a combat session.
My cousin just played like a 9 or 10 party.
A combat session.
Yeah.
And then if you're in a dungeon, each room of the dungeon is going to take.
You got to stop halfway through and then come back to the combat.
Yeah, that's.
No, but I mean, because if you with a certain amount of people you have in the group. especially if anyone who's been playing more or someone who's interested, there's enough of a diversity among people and what people like to play.
Right.
You're going to find that there's people that are much more like barbarian based, or you're going to have people that are much more rogue based.
See, and that's why I'm saying that I feel like the variety will come naturally. Not every time. I'm not going to say that it's always going to be like that. You might wind up with a whole bunch of edgelords who just are
That's
moody
very probable.
And just
And
whatever.
you're going to have a bunch of edgelords and one person's like, golly gee willikers, I'm here to save the world. And everyone's like, we're going to save it with darkness and our own
and
eggs.
in my mind,
So that's
I'm like,
mostly new players.
in my mind though, I'm like, that's hilarious. I want to see that. Like, I want to see
Right.
like one like little gnome that's like
that kind
super
of falls back
jolly,
to, like, what I
and
was
then like 4 really angry, dark, rogue tieflings or whatever, and they're just following around this. Like, I just think that's interesting to me. I think that's sometimes
See, I think that kind of goes back to like what I mentioned earlier. It's kind of like the trial by fire. If they want to do that as a DM, like there's at a certain point where you're like, I don't want to argue. And again, it calls back to the thing that we saw where someone wanted to be like this edgelord character. It's like, I come commenting from the sky, and they're kind of like, okay, you take 300 points of damage, you're
Right.
dead.
Right.
And then you're like, oh.
That's a pretty clear message to your players, but I almost feel like that might be...
I mean, that's the extreme.
Right.
But this is, as far as like trial by fire, it's one of those things where like, cool, everyone play what they want to play. Because keep in mind, people talk about their campaigns, even with their DM. There might be some metagaming, but you still talk to each other. And let's say the DM is out of the story, like as far as like out of your discussion, and you're talking with the rest of your group. Let's say your character just died, and you're like, holy crap, why did I die?
Messed up.
And then you can talk to your players, and you have some that are newer, or some that are older players, and you might be able to discuss like, you know what we're really missing right now? We're really missing a healer, and you're like, oh, you're
That's
right.
why we keep going.
That's why we keep dying.
Right.
And you might go, you know what? We need to fix this, and then someone might step up, take that role. I mean, you could have a session where every character dies, and everyone's like, we need to rethink our priorities
and
here.
to your point, I don't think we have to baby players.
No, and that's exactly what I was
think,
gonna
but
say.
I do think that sometimes you can add in some interesting
Yeah, you can drop in some
do.
some waypoints and some things to like let them know. But I am, as a DM, I am a hard stance on. I'm very creatively free and everything, but I'm a hard stance on. The world exists and does not give a crap about you. So things are going to happen whether you're a party of bards or you're a party of or a variety of things. It does not matter. Things are going to happen. There are events happening in the world that you can either be a part of, get passed over, or become crushed by. And that world's going to continue on. And so that's when I challenge the players to become that variety. So when the world continues on, they can say, no, we're not going down that easily.
Well, I mean, it's like playing anything like you just start playing Skyrim.
Skyrim. This is not sponsored by Bethesda, but I love Skyrim.
But, I mean, like, there's things that you get access to and things that you don't, even just purely based upon your race. And as a player, you can either choose to accept that, or you start a new save file with a new one.
Fight against that.
I mean, because this also rolls into, and this is also up to DMs. There's something to be said about having it so that you want your character to go away for a bit. Like, with ours, we probably shouldn't for a little bit, seeing how our characters are on a bit of a time restraint. But, I mean, you've said it before, where like, oh, let's say you're tired of playing Soren for a bit and you want to play a different character for a little while. We'll have Soren go on a spirit quest or something. Yeah. And then I bring another character so I can get a little bit more variety. There's nothing to be said like you realize, like, man, all of our characters keep going down. And you guys discuss it as a group and you're like, man, we really need a healer. Or, oh, we need a rogue or something. And you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds like something I should probably try to do. And you can have someone go, okay, cool. Hey, DM, my character just got a letter. Need to go home for a while. Their mom's sick. And you're like, bye guys. And then your new character comes in, like your bard's like, I gotta go home. And then your new and then you're like, hi, I'm the rogue.
I'm here. I just stole this flute from that douchebag.
I mean, and from a DM perspective, I do agree with you. I think that, it's a lot of fun to use that creativity, and, I also agree that it doesn't really matter what you play. The world is what your world is. But on the other hand, I'm also kind of that kind of person that's like, well, if I get to be as creative as I frickin' want, then somebody else can have a little bit of creative leeway with what they want to.
Which is perfectly fine. Like I said,
I just don't want to stifle creativity in my attempt to form some varying
inversely
party.
to that, by fitting into one of the roles, you can then instill creativity in how am I going to make this role my own? How am I going to be the healer, but also still, like, you could be a battle cleric. That's totally a thing. If you still want to heal, but you also want to just beat the crap out of people, battle cleric. There you go. War domain. Kersmack. Heal. Pong. Like, you can totally do that, and I'm all for that. As long as some aspect of the roles are filled, then I feel like the challenges will still be there, but they'll also be able to easily work within the world and make the world, like, grab and mold the earth as their party deems necessary, rather than going, well, can't touch that dirt pile, not strong enough, or can't touch that dirt pile, not pretty enough.
Part of the things, I guess, then is you have to really encourage players to get involved in play. Because if someone says, like, oh, I'm the barbarian, and they can play a barbarian, but if they're not involved, then they're not going to even be able to use them. It's like, if they're solely focused, because again, this is such a storytelling game, and yes, some people play it for the combat, and I'd be like, all right, save that for the one-shots. If you're going to play a campaign, you should be much more involved in it, or at least involved in your character. Even if your character's not, like, all up in the main story, like, isn't the face, but they should still be playing true to themselves. And that's where you can start getting some of those things where...
Even if playing true to the character self is playing true to yourself and what you do, you really... I mean, sometimes it's slow going into that, but play into yourself how you'd interact or how your character would interact within the party, and that will form a more diverse, rich group, rather than the Bardashians, who everyone's going to be like, give me money. No,
I mean, all I'm saying is that you can have Sporty Bard, and you can have Posh Bard, and you can have...
That's the Spice
You can have the Spice Bards. I mean, you can have many a variety of bards.
And you're not wrong. It's one of those things where I've created my two barbarians who are a heavy metal group because they have because one's an electric dragonborn who's really technical on his lute, and the other one's an Earth Genasi named Rust, who is just like Nathan Explosion from Metalocalypse.
Brutal.
Do you guys like dark ale? This is our new song, Duncan Hill's Ale. Duncan. But again, it's one of those things where if you playing these two of the characters, as far as like you said, like a battle cleric, you could have someone who's a cleric. But if the person's playing true to that character who's got their backstory pretty well fleshed out, their background fleshed out, you might be able to encourage. I wouldn't even say encourage, but they might come across it their own naturally. We're like, I really like to be able to heal my party, but I want to kick some ass. And you go like, well, you can set your character up like that. And this is where some of it comes down on the DM or even other players on instructing new people how to do, or even just talking. Like you could be playing for a few years, and you're like, man, I really like being a barbarian, but I really like to do a couple other things. Someone else might have a great idea, or the DM might be like, hey, you can also do this if you multi-class, or if you take this route, or even if you had a specific race that might do it. Like, oh man, I wish my barbarian wasn't such an ugly mother. And you're like, well, make him a tiefling, he'd be prettier with the charisma. You're like, oh, that's a great idea.
See, and I think to that credit, that like it's all about communication, because like maybe you start out and you want to just smash, you want to just barbarian everything. But then as you go along, you get maybe a little stale in the role. Maybe you want to try something different. Like you said, you can either switch it out, or maybe you bring it to your DM and they're like, oh, well, I can run a one shot and you can try a spell cast.
Right, and that's
you
where
can kind of get that sort of ability. But I like, once again, I just think sometimes it just needs to.
This is where I'm talking about how one shots are such a vital thing for players to try new things. I mean, because even you can even have something in mind, but you don't even realize what you're doing until you're playing. Because the thing about it, like when I made Soren, he was supposed to be just this brutal Viking character running around. He's an 8-foot tall giant dude with a hammer who follows Thor and Viking lore. He should just be running around smashing everything with no questions, just pillaging.
And instead, he's like, what did this door do to me?
Well,
nothing.
I end up playing it, and I end up playing like I'm the Marvel version of Thor. versus like
he's like Captain Sword America. He's like the good.
I'm just like, oh, this ale is delicious. I shall have another. Oh, that was wrong. I am so sorry. I'll clean it up.
Give me a mop. I'll take care of it.
I want to make sure that I am always worthy. So it's sometimes you may not even realize what you're doing until you start playing it. So you might even start gearing it up for them or creating that backstory. And this is again, you know, as far as I go, I'm such a big storyteller, and you know, so when I create a character, I really want to get really in depth with them and know them backwards and forwards as much as I can. And that really fleshes out what you're doing. So this is where you can find out if you're like, oh, you want to be a cleric that does more damage, or if you want to be a more, I mean, because you talk about paladins, and paladins in your head are these holy like destroyers. But
I'm gonna just unload 8,000 D6 smite damage into your face real quick.
Right, but then it comes down to how you play that, because then you have my paladin. I haven't gotten a chance to play it. My what's his name? Is it Arcthos? I think is his name. He's the tiefling paladin. He wouldn't be like that because he's supposed to be trying to change his image. So he's a paladin, but he's going to be much more like
lay on hands, everyone.
Right, he would probably try to heal. Like, he would
high fives all around.
He might get like more angry and try and smite another evildoer.
Again, that's individual player.
Right,
what they want to do. Like, I love broken characters that just like screw everything up that they touch, like and
do I.
get in their own way and can be called plot device. But
whatever do you mean? There's no record of this.
There's record. But, you know, that's just my preference because I like that sort of struggling dynamic. So that might not necessarily mean that I always play a rogue or that I always play like that sort of like pissed off, depressed character. But it might mean that I have a little tendency towards that, you know? And I think that's just a natural preference.
You brought up the DM doing things, and that got me thinking about... This really went off from a debate. Now we're just having good old-fashioned discussion. But really talking about...
debating back.
We're going to live stream a fight after
this. Please, no, I'll lose.
Ready, fight!
But as the DM, let's say somebody wants to... like, try... like. Branch out their character. That's on the DM then to not be like, okay, here's this new situation, force it, like to dangle the carrot in front of the horse, and if they want to go for it, you set out that, and if they want to try and reach for it and give it a shot, that's on them. That's fine. And I mean, back to the party balance. That gives everyone, if everyone's filling that party balance role, that's when you can, if there's this nice little sphere, you can then start to like mold the shape a little bit where everyone's trying to do things and change it up, but that internal structure is still there.
I mean, you can still, as a DM, kind of push these people, because, I mean, especially with people's backgrounds or their class or something, because you have your main story, but then whatever your players choose, you then almost have to create a whole nother side world for each player.
Because they chose wrong.
Not even because they chose wrong.
I'm just kidding.
But did I mention I was called plot device?
They did not choose. I never said that.
But
shut up.
But as far as but it's one of those things where, like, I mean, with Sam's character, it kind of worked out. Like, you already had like probably demons running around doing stuff. And
then here comes a tiefling.
And you're like, oh,
look, a tiefling
who had a very tragic backstory that they didn't even know they had.
Right.
So, well, and again, that falls into like, if you leave your backstory open up for your DM to interpret, then you have no right to be like, oh, why am I multi-classing?
Why am I the plot device?
And that's a fair point too, because I think, you know, when you and I were getting into this, I wasn't really sure what I was looking for out of a backstory, and, you know, that's where you came in and you were like, I have a backstory for you. And I was like, cool, let's go with it.
Let's roll them bones.
You know, some other characters, like, you know, another rogue in our group might actually know exactly what they want for their backstory and, you know, have discussed it extensively with other people.
Well, the difference is what they think they know about their backstory.
Yes. Or what they think they know.
Because that, again, this is all under a DM's control, and this is where the DM can be as nice or as mean as they want to.
The DM should follow the wishes of a player up to as much as would make sense. If a player has complete control over their entire history, then you have no way to take what they've done and add that little bit of spice, which I'm all for. And we'll probably talk about in a different episode, is adding that spice as a DM. But something I want to shift gears. We've talked about one shots and how they are literally you take out, you just shake the bottle, and you see what happens. And then there's campaigns where it's more structured, and you want to try and play a campaign and go for it, and not be like, well, done, we're dead now. But
If we die, we die.
Precons, pre-constructed like Curse of Strahd.
Yeah.
That you can modify the story a little bit, but there's a story to be told, and you can't really. There's certain things you can try, like there's different routes and avenues, and the Bardashians could go in there, but there's going to be parts of that story.
Good chance the Bardashians will not survive.
There's a part of that. There's going to be a good part of that story, or let's say there's a no magic party. There's a good chunk of that story that's going to be a giant mountain for them to try and overcome because they're missing an element that the story can't accommodate to, because there's story beats that have been made and placed to get from point A to point B.
Well, see, but then it becomes, do you, as a DM, do you let them, make their own mistakes? Or do you really try, like, guys, no, if you guys want to do this, we really need you guys to do this.
Or maybe you compromise and you say, well, hey, you know what? We'll run, Curse of Strahd or whatever, and, try to make a balanced party out of that. But then maybe on the side you run another one that, maybe they can play whatever they want. It might just be a matter of, like, compromising communication.
Or letting them know straight up that what their party makeup probably will do great at some parts and not good at others, and let them know that their challenge is ahead and they better be prepared for failure on the chance that's going to happen.
Or there's the whole thought. This is a really probably not the best example. Is the replayability. It's a precon, so there's nothing that says it's you have a team go in, they somehow make it to the end, and they're like, man, I really wish I knew about all this other stuff. As a DM, you can either go, cool, here's the book, read it, or two, you go, cool, you want to try again, and then everyone goes, all right, cool. And because that's the whole aspect of things like
the D&D world.
Well, because this is like the whole aspect of things like like Skyrim or Fallout or.
I know the story of Fallout real good.
Well,
and
yeah.
Skyrim.
Well, but I mean, as far as that goes, there's times where your character isn't always like, because again, you essentially it's stats in the beginning, so you may not ever be able to talk your way into something unless you start cheating the game. But I did that for Fallout 4. But this is where it is where there's also the aspect of long-term replayability, because there's nothing that says that maybe like you play through it once and everyone's like, there's one or two people like, you know what, I'm good with not knowing, and they're like, hey guys, thanks for the campaign, let me know if you guys do one shots or something else. And there's a new player that wants to come in. There's other players that kind of know how it should be, because again, there's so much of this game that's based on chance with the die rolls and stuff like that. Good. So there may be times where you missed a roll and you're like, man, if we get back to this point, I'm going to do it again. My character is going to be built for that one moment.
I'm not going to be thrown up in the town square and hung.
Yeah. So then you get some new players in, so you can easily guide them in a little bit easier, but then you're also learning new stuff. So there is that aspect of replayability, so that maybe you can do it, Sam's way of like trial by fire. It's like, well, you guys all want to be bards? Good luck. Yeah. And then like maybe they learn from their mistakes. Because again, that comes down to if players learn from their mistakes, and that's where you decide as a DM when enough is enough.
And let's be real here. If the Bardashians exist and they're fighting a dragon, the only one of them can have fun with that dragon. The dragon's going to be hungry afterwards, and only one of them is going to live.
No, see, that's why you feed the other 4 bards first.
Well, no,
and then seduce the dragon.
If one of them is a druid multi-class and they turn into a donkey, they're safe.
He's right. He's right.
What are you doing in my game?
Why is there an orc?
Why is there an orc? Oh, man, ogre. You can't be... I mean, ogre... You can't be an ogre. Yeah. We're digressing here.
Yeah.
But homebrews.
Anyway, I think that no matter what side of the spectrum you're on, I think it's important to communicate, and I think it's important to discuss things with your DM, because in the end, your DM's God. So, I mean, well...
I don't want to give him that much power.
The DM...
You don't have a choice.
The DM runs as much of the world as they can outside of your characters.
Yes.
And what happens in the world and what machinations and what power struggles are happening outside of what you can see. And so there are things that the DM can tailor to the party, and there are things that if the DM actually wants the plot and things to progress and a story to actually be made, can't. And that's where party balance makes it so the chances of survival slash immersing yourself into the world and on a broad spectrum works, while everyone just going buck wild and the Bardashians or the barbarians show up, and then they can dunk into the world, but it's going to be like a more niche part rather than experiencing totality.
And I think it all comes down to the individual person and the individual players. You know, I kind of like that sense of chaos, like, you know, that sort of sense of like, oh crap, we don't know any magic. How are we gonna deactivate this magic item? Like,
how are we gonna get through this?
We're screwed.
This magic door.
Like, I like that.
The argument, like critical thinking to get around it,
right? And then there's gonna be some people that are like, yeah, no, we definitely need somebody to take care of this. And in my opinion, kind of maybe becomes a little boring, but for other people, that it just works just fine. I think it just kind of all depends on the individual.
Well, and I think also you have to. This is where you start to consider, like we've talked about before, having a DM that's right for you. Because there's going to be sometimes where you have a DM who's going to stick hard to their rules, and maybe there's some players that need that. And then, of course, this is hard to having a DM, picking a DM if you don't know what kind of player you need to be at. But you're going to have some DMs like where you try to play the character, you're like, man, I'm going to be this badass protagonist. And your DM's like, all right, cool, let's see how you do this. And you're screwed. All right, you're going to do what I want you to do now. Or you can have it so there's ways like... I
want to be this badass protagonist. You can certainly try and let's see what happens, bud.
Well yeah, and kind of that kind of thing where there's the hard one where it's like, okay, cool, you try to be hard and you're dying immediately. Or having it where your character is, he tries to be an edgelord and everyone, and like he just runs into people and they're like, you're just ridiculous. Like none of his rolls are working. Like even if he rolls like a nat 20 on intimidation, they're like,
I'm scared.
I feel like I should be scared, but you look ridiculous.
You got like 20 belt buckles on.
Right. So there's like the
you only have one pair of pants.
How many belts do you need? How big is your sword? I mean...
I use daggers.
What? It's not like an anime giant sword.
That's what I was thinking. Like the anime giant sword with like the spikes.
What's your main weapon? Just dagger. Wait. What's your class? I'm a rogue.
I'm a fighter and I still use this dagger because I didn't roll high enough for my strength.
I can't use this giant sword. Maybe you need to do a different character.
And of course, this is where, like, again, with certain DMs, like when we started, you had us like all the way up for at least level 5. You're like, do you need to change your character? Do you want to? Are you sure this is still working out in the way you want to do?
Part of me now wonders if he was trying to push somebody to
No.
fulfill a role.
No. Everyone's doing exactly what they want. If you're referring to plot devices, want to multi-class, that was not even a thing until it was brought up, and then it was like click. What came?
And again,
gears were there; they were kind of just spinning, and then plot device added a gear, and it was like click, 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 and everything worked. The clock begins
and the planets aligned.
And that's the thing where that's where the DM's got to come up on the fly to. Let's say the party doesn't want to balance itself. The DM has to find a way to not cater to them, not baby them with the world, but find a way to at least give them a chance and see if they take the chance.
That comes down to you being, as a DM, what you want. If you're like, all right, cool, I really want everyone, like, if there are a bunch of new players and you're just like,
you're all gonna die.
Like, then you just like, all right, let's see if I can try and cater this more towards the situation.
That's when you just set a timer behind your screen. How long until the party just TPKs?
Right, but then like you're up front with them, going like, okay, cool. Like, because again, if you ask like, hey, do you want to? You've done 3 levels. How are you feeling?
The reason I did that with you guys is because you guys are new, and I wanted to give you that chance.
That's the point I'm trying to make. Versus and letting you know, like, hey, after level 5, you're stuck in that character until you die.
After level, so how I did it was up to level 5, because that's when you get your subclass and like an ability for it and everything, and you learn more about it. Up to level 5, there's plot armor for most people, unless they do something really dumb, like running into a dragon's cave, like I can't die, like that you're asking to die, but.
Sword.
Plot armor, but then afterwards, that plot armor fades away, and then you become big old squishies. Big old squishies for the world to be like, I wonder what happens if I were to just stab this. And that happens.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like you said, it definitely comes down to the DM and finding a DM that works for you and finding players, a table of players that want to work and want to actually try to work together. And if no one wants to work together, no matter if your party is balanced or if your party is chaos, if no one at that table really wants to work together, doesn't matter what your team makeup is, it's not going to work. There's gonna be holes in that fabric, and a strong breeze is going to fly through, and the plot's just going to go, poof, and the team's not going to work. Like you have all
Unless
Bardashians.
you give them a reason to have to work
Exactly.
together.
Like let's say it's all Bardashians, but no, not a single one of the Bardashians want to be a team player. Then that's on the team. That's on the table. The DM can try, but then there's going to be a moment where that steam of we're all the Bardashians, we're all great, is going to start to fade.
Yeah.
And the same thing works with, let's say we have the healer, the tank, the mat, like all that. If no one wants to work together, let's say the mage is like, strong fellow, I need you over, like I need you to help me with this, and like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to. You're weak. I am the strong person. That steam's going to fade again. So, in the middle ground is your party can be absolutely bonkers, or your party can be more well-rounded and still diverse and eclectic. But if the DM doesn't work with the players, or the players don't work with the DM, or the players don't work with themselves, then there's going to be that moment where that hill is just going to become too much, and that's where it's going to stall.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've seen that happen many times where people don't want to work together, or someone does something does something not for the sake of plot development or character development, but does something for the sake of being a contrarian and trying to fight against whatever the party wants, just so they can be like, I'm doing this, take it, you guys have to deal with it, it's D&D. There's moments where people will do that, and that's where something will stall, and either the table comes together and goes, oh, we gotta pick ourselves up and put it together, or we need to try again.
See, and that's where, again, we've brought this up several times, one-shots are so important, because I mean, just coming out right out the gate, one-shots are a great way to get players used to playing with each other, like having them already be an established group. Because we've done it where we were all drawn together with a common goal. We've done it where we were already a group of characters that have wandered around doing things. Like, we've been everything from, like, you've been summoned to this place to take on Santa, versus, like, you're an established group who's pretty well known for attacking demon stuff. There's a demon stuff over there, and the team's like,
go get them.
Yes!
And
This
the
is
team's
perfect!
like, demons.
Or you're just a random soul in a body that's made to hunt demons, and you're like, I don't know why I'm so good at this, but okay.
I mean, it comes down to, like you said, how the player wants to play versus how the player wants to play with other players.
Yeah.
They can have their own narrative.
No, and that's a very good point. I think that affects any campaign. And of course, I feel like you're always going to have these moments of, like, at some point you're going to kind of fall into there. If you can get yourself out, eventually, that's good. I mean, I think that it's cool when you have some party conflict, as long as it doesn't sort of, like, just
tear the group asunder.
Just tear the group
like,
apart.
I tried to kill that other player. Like, there's not very much you can do to recover from that.
I mean,
well,
Straight up,
we'll see.
Straight up trying to murder another player as a
with
player.
like no sort of outside exterior force.
Just doing it.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's almost impossible to recover from.
my alignment has changed.
Oh no! So, I think I mean after this we've had a nice, lovely debate, and I think we came together. We understand.
I think at the point we've come to is that there's an argument for both, and it really just depends on the group playing, the players in that group, and as well as the DM.
And communication is key.
What are we talking about? Relationships now?
Yes.
Oh,
relationships in the party.
There you go.
Which
we're gonna have sex in the party.
We'll get to that actually in a different episode. I want to talk about it.
Hey, Blue. Like, oh no! All right, guys. So again, this has become like the debate has kind of merged at this point, but there is something to be said about either playing anything that you want to play and dealing with the consequences, whatever they may be, or having it more geared towards having a well-balanced group. As far as we can tell, there's not really a hard and fast rule for it. It's really about just doing what you want to do. We just had the debate just to show the pros and cons of both. So with that, feel free to let us know in the comments of anything to let us know what you guys prefer, or if you have a different opinion on it altogether. So I think that's about it for us this time. Thank you for joining us for this lovely discussion on party balance. We will see you next time. D10tion dismissed.